Coronavirus cases are on the rise in China. More lockdowns, mass virus testing, and public space closures across the country. 100 million doses of domestic vaccines for Chinese people, and another 100 million doses will be imported from Germany, maybe for another group. How corrupt are Chinese officials? Their embezzled money could fill the trillion-dollar gap of China's pension fund, and the list of corrupt officials could replace the country's rich list. Hongkongers' freedoms diminished greatly over recent months due to the new national security law, attacks happening in broad daylight. And the data of Americans is in the hands of the CCP. Zoom gives its user data to the Chinese regime so the company can stay in the country's huge market. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Virus cases are on the rise across many provinces in China. The situation appears to be severe, with lockdowns, mass virus testing, and public space closures in the country. Here's more on the story from NTD's Don Ma.
Virus outbreaks are on the rise throughout China. The Chinese state media is acknowledging it. On Saturday, an article published in Chinese state-run media Health Times says that China is experiencing a multi-point virus outbreak. It said over 20 cluster outbreaks have occurred in different regions. The most recent province to report outbreaks is Liaoning. On Sunday, authorities ordered lockdowns in the province's Dalian city. 14 schools were closed, as well as general clinics, supermarkets, some hospitals, and public spaces. According to China's numbers, at least 6 people tested positive in the city. A local resident in Dalian's Jingzhou district tells us about the situation.
The Jingzhou district is now under lockdown. The district is being quarantined. Entering and leaving is prohibited. People inside cannot get out. The people outside cannot enter. If the situation is not that serious, they wouldn't lock it down.
Local residents are flooding supermarkets to buy food in preparation for the lockdown, and virus testing sites are packed with people in line to get tested. In another district in lockdown, residents are shouting out their windows, showing their support towards each other. They're shouting, "We can do it." Outbreaks are reported in many provinces across China. Recently, in China's Sichuan province, a rise in cases is seen in the capital city. In fear of lockdowns, locals are fleeing in large numbers through train stations and in cars. Chinese state media are also reporting a rise in cases in China's Guangdong province. Large numbers of residents are being tested. Meanwhile, in Beijing as well, authorities are ordering lockdowns in areas and mass testing residents. Outbreaks are reported in many other locations throughout China. That includes Shanghai, Inner Mongolia, Heilongjiang, and Zhejiang. Reporting by Don Ma, NTD News.
Now we turn to vaccines in China. South China Morning Post reported Beijing is planning to vaccinate Chinese people in January and February with 100 million doses of domestic vaccines. The vaccines are yet to complete a clinical trial. At the same time, China is importing vaccines from another country. A Chinese company announced last week it would import 100 million doses of a CCP virus vaccine from Germany. Germany's Biontech has developed the new vaccine BNT162b2 with a U.S. company Pfizer. A clinical trial showed it was 95% effective. Chinese doctor Zhao Zhongyuan, who lives in Canada, believes the German vaccines will be used for Chinese people with privileges.
The imported vaccines are definitely not for the general public. It will be for officials, for sure. The ruling authorities will receive these imported vaccines. Ordinary people will get the domestic vaccines, which are substandard and haven't gone through the clinical trial. Anyway, there are many Chinese people. The authorities don't care if some of them die.
The vaccine is the first CCP virus vaccine to receive the green light in Western countries. The UK and US granted emergency use authorizations for the product. Canada has given it full approval. Now we look to Hong Kong. Hong Kong bans all flights arriving from the UK on Tuesday. It comes after a new strain of the CCP virus was detected in Britain. The new ban rules that people who have stayed for more than 2 hours in the UK over the past 14 days would shortly be banned from boarding any flights to Hong Kong. The ban includes Hong Kong residents. It's no surprise that Hong Kong became the first city in Asia to announce such a halt. As a former British colony, Hong Kong has more ties to the UK than any other Asian city. At the end of November, Hong Kong saw a spike in the number of cases. As a result, authorities once again shut down restaurants after 6 p.m. and closed gyms and beauty salons. The measures will be in place until at least January the 6th. China, Japan, and South Korea say they are monitoring the new strain. The UK says the new strain could be more infectious. Its European neighbors and several other countries, including Canada and Iran, closed their doors to travelers from the country. Now we look to the deficits of China's pension system and an expert's proposal for filling the gap. China's pension system is facing serious deficits. Official data shows that in the coming years, China is expected to have a pension gap of more than $1 trillion. Former governor of China's central bank, Dai Xianglong, offers a solution. Over the weekend, Dai suggested at a meeting that a certain percentage of land transfer funds and assets of corrupt officials could be transferred to replenish pension reserves. He said the court has confiscated a lot of money from corrupt officials. Each confiscation amounts to millions or billions of dollars. Dai was also chairman of China's National Social Security Fund. A summary from China's official figures shows since 2012, about 470 high-ranking officials have been punished due to corruption. At least 80 of them embezzled over $15 million. One Chinese army official embezzled $3 billion. Chinese state media revealed this amount. The real number could be much higher. Some netizens said this list of corrupt officials is the real Chinese rich list. Some other netizens said if the money confiscated from all the corrupt officials is evenly distributed to every Chinese person, China will instantly rank among the top 10 richest countries per capita in the world. And where has this billions and even trillions of dollars gone? The CCP Central Commission for Discipline Inspection says the stolen money had been turned over to the state treasury. Dai also suggested the land the state acquired from people does not necessarily have to be used for building houses. Instead, part of it can be used for pension funds. In Hong Kong, followers of the spiritual practice Falun Gong say they've been under attack in recent weeks. Their protest sites against the CCP's persecution have been repeatedly damaged by unidentified persons. NTD's Sarah Liang has more.
Over the weekend on the streets in Hong Kong, 4 stands created by Falun Gong practitioners were damaged by an unidentified person. Last weekend, 2 more stands underwent the same. For 20 years, adherents of the spiritual practice Falun Gong have taken to the streets to expose China's persecution of followers through information stands, among other means. They speak to Hong Kong locals and tourists from mainland China. On Saturday, a man in his late 50s to 60s ripped the banners and display boards at one of the Falun Gong stands. When practitioners there asked him why, he didn't say a word and ran away in a hurry. Later, he ventured across the highway. Around 6 people took pictures of his sabotage on their mobile phones. One of those there had seen a similar attack on a stand the weekend before. Afterward, the man went to another stand to do the same and dropped display boards into nearby water. On Sunday, a man suspected to be the same person went to some other protest stands attempting the same acts of vandalism. Falun Gong practitioners called the police. The police investigated and retrieved the display boards out of water from the day before.
They often come to our stand to take pictures and interfere with us. We try to maintain peace of mind and keep on telling citizens about the true situation of the persecution. We hope more people will know the truth.
Later, a pro-Beijing group uploaded a video on its social media showing the man splashing paint on the display boards at one of the stands. The incident roused public outrage. People passing by condemned the Chinese Communist Party's mentality in its persecution of Falun Gong practitioners. They said they believe the CCP's suppression of beliefs is counterproductive.
However, the CCP have tried to suppress them. They've insisted on saying we have freedom of religious belief. This spirit is worthy of admiration. The more they do damage to the stands, the more attention Falun Gong gets. The public may not care so much about it before, but they will pay attention now. Their actions backfire.
Hong Kong's Falun Gong practitioners appealed to the police to arrest the perpetrators. They also appealed to the public to safeguard Hong Kong's freedom of speech. Falun Gong is a traditional spiritual practice originating from China. The group has been persecuted in China since 1999. The CCP's propaganda swept the nation into a frenzy denouncing the practice and its followers. After Beijing imposed the new national security law on Hong Kong this summer, the question as to whether Falun Gong practitioners can still have their stands on the street has attracted more attention than ever. Reporting by Sarah Liang, NTD News.
Since Beijing imposed the national security law on Hong Kong, activists have been leaving. But normal Hong Kong citizens are also heading to democratic countries with an eye on the future. Libby Hogan reports.
This is the last time the Lai family celebrated Mid-Autumn Festival in Hong Kong, making moon cakes together. Arza and Willie say they no longer recognise the city they grew up in. After the demands of millions of people marching together last year were dismissed by the city's government, and Beijing imposed a sweeping national security law in June on Hong Kong that China says will maintain public safety and bring order after last year's anti-government protests. Officials also are adamant that the rights and freedoms of citizens remain intact. A Hong Kong government spokesman said last year's, quote, violent protests and anarchy on the streets may be one of the motivations for people choosing to emigrate, along with job, schooling and business opportunities or other personal reasons. But critics say the law further erodes autonomy in the city, and it's been followed by a relentless crackdown on dissent. The Lai family say the response to the protests has brought uncertainty into their lives and pushed them to emigrate to Scotland.
Us leaving is not because of politics as such, but we're leaving because politics is now impacting our lives. We're leaving Hong Kong because it isn't ideal for our children's future.
Arza and Willie were filled with hope that the city would turn towards greater democracy last year as they marched with their children during the 2 million strong June rally. But authorities dug in their heels. Police have arrested roughly 10,000 people in relation to the demonstrations.
If the youth have to worry and have to fear to speak out, then this isn't a suitable place. The best I can do right now is bring them to a more suitable environment. What's incredibly sad about this is I can only help my own children.
Hong Kong, a former British colony, was promised wide-ranging freedoms when it was returned to Chinese rule in 1997. Since the imposition of the new security law, authorities have removed some pro-democracy books in libraries, banned certain songs, raided a newsroom, and more. The Lais are among thousands of Hong Kongers looking to escape Beijing's tightening grip. Initial indications show this may be a second wave of migration, similar to the decade leading up to the 1997 handover. They are sacrificing a comfortable life and rebuilding it in a place they've never been before.
This house is the result of our hardship. Together we've experienced highs and lows, especially these few years with our third child. We've experienced some lows, but I hope we can continue on through the hardship and the path ahead.
After 3 days of packing and sifting through years of memories, they say their final goodbyes.
I'm quite nervous. It's not the same feeling as going on holiday. We're going to such an unfamiliar place. Who knows what will happen and what challenges we face.
It's not a farewell. Just see you soon.
A Zoom executive gives its user data to the CCP so the company can stay in China's massive market. It refers to users outside China, including the United States.
Former Zoom executive Jin Xinjiang worked with Chinese authorities to provide data of users outside of China. Court documents say this allowed Zoom to keep market access in China. Although Zoom is based in the US, its software is developed in China. When Zoom usage exploded during the pandemic, China tightened control. It ordered Zoom employees to shut down what Beijing calls illegal meetings and illegal accounts within 1 minute. If it took more than 1 minute to shut down, it was rated as security non-compliant. Victims include activists commemorating the Tiananmen Square massacre and Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang, China. Zoom says it's cooperating with federal investigators and has launched an internal investigation. Zoom fired Jin and placed other employees on administrative leave. The CCP demands all communications companies to censor speech it deems unacceptable. Anyone who fails to comply gets blocked from the massive Chinese market. In September last year, the CCP blocked Zoom. It allegedly told Zoom that if it wanted to get back into the Chinese market, it had to monitor user communications, censor unacceptable topics, release private information on nearly 1 million people in the US, and hand over special access to Zoom's systems. Zoom got back into the Chinese market in November of last year.
Britons are being urged to flood their local Chinese embassy with Christmas cards to protest the detention of the two Michaels in China. NTD's UK correspondent spoke with the man behind the campaign.
It's been more than 2 years since the Chinese Communist Party arrested two Canadians, Michael Kovrig and Michael Spivor. Now there's a campaign to flood the desks of Chinese embassies with Christmas cards for the two Michaels. Behind the campaign is former diplomat Charles Parton, who is friends with Kovrig.
I think the important thing is, one, that there should be some form of emotional comfort to the two Michaels when they get out and they realise that a lot of people cared. And secondly, that more people should realise the true nature of the Communist Party and how it behaves, and therefore adopt more realistic policies towards it.
The detention of the two Michaels is widely considered retaliation to Canadian police arresting the chief finance officer of Chinese telecoms giant Huawei. Meng Wanzhou was arrested on multiple charges, including for bank fraud and violating US sanctions against Iran. She's tagged electronically in her luxury Vancouver mansion, but free to move around. The two Canadians were charged with espionage 18 months after they were arrested and have been subject to torture and interrogation while isolated. Parton had the idea for the campaign after rereading a book by a former Reuters correspondent, Anthony Gray, who was held hostage in China during the Cultural Revolution.
Held in my own home, which was turned into a prison and covered in slogans and black paint and pictures of Mao Zedong and so on, hitting me and bending me double and hitting me in the stomach and holding my head down between my knees. They said I was a big spy. Gray, I wasn't remotely a spy. I was simply a Reuters foreign correspondent.
He never saw the thousands of cards sent to him, but he thinks it made some impression on the Foreign Ministry, who must have had to burn them by the sackful.
Let's hope that some attention will be drawn by the Christmas cards and something good will come of it for the two Michaels.
People are asked to send cards to their local Chinese consulate and when doing it, post the hashtag #FreeChinaHostages. Jane Merrill, NTD News, London.
Canadian Foreign Affairs Minister François-Philippe Champagne fired back at Beijing. The communist regime had criticized Ottawa for building an international alliance to free Canadians, Michael Kovrig and Michael Spivor, from Chinese prisons. In an interview with the Canadian press last week, Champagne said he would do what is best for Canada's interest and wouldn't follow Beijing's instructions.
I'll take no lessons from anyone. And certainly not from China when it comes to defending and standing up for values and principles and defend Canadian interests and defend Michael Kovrig and Spivor.
He added his message to China is, the world is watching. And that's all for today's China in Focus. Thanks for watching and see you tomorrow.